In today's automotive world, there's no denying just how expensive new cars have become, especially with consumers demanding more technology and luxury in these new vehicles. Buyers who are looking for a car that's well under $30,000 are kind of left with a very small pool of vehicles. Thankfully, that pool of vehicles is growing for 2024 with the introduction of this. This right here is the entry-level, brand new 2024 Buick Envista Avenir, a new entry-level SUV that slots below the Encore and Encore GX. And with a starting price in the low $20,000 range, this is literally one of the most affordable new cars that money can buy. Now, I already had a chance to drive this vehicle a couple months ago where we put it through our usual battery of tests. However, this week, as you can see, Buick has loaned us the top of the line model to live with for a full week. So at the end of this video, we're going to find out, has Buick managed to successfully create an entry-level SUV that doesn't feel cheap? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the exterior styling of this brand new Envista, let me go ahead and pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this thing. Now, technically, people looking in this segment of vehicle don't really care too much about horsepower and torque. What they care about is fuel efficiency, but this is where Buick kind of went the extra mile because unlike some of the competitors, this model has a boosted engine and it delivers far more horsepower and torque versus a lot of its main rivals. Now, underneath this hood, you're going to find the same engine that's also powering the related Chevrolet Trax, which the Trax was also redesigned this year. But we're going to focus, of course, on the Envista. It's platform mate. This is a 1.2 liter. That's right, a 1.2 liter turbocharged direct injection 3-cylinder engine. That's right. This is not a 4-cylinder that's naturally aspirated. That's what you typically find in this segment. This is a turbocharged 3-cylinder hooked up with a 6-speed automatic transmission. The numbers are 137 horsepower, which doesn't sound like a lot until you realize the vehicles like the Hyundai Venue and the Nissan Kicks offer like 120-ish horsepower, but torque is pretty impressive at 162 pound-feet of torque. That's roughly about 50 more pound-feet of torque versus what you're going to find in the Hyundai and the Nissan competitor. It all goes out through that 6-speed automatic. The downside, of course, is this vehicle, along with the Trax, is only available with front-wheel drive. Buick does not offer all-wheel drive on this car. They will happily sell you an Encore GX if you guys want all-wheel drive. Fuel economy is respectable at 28 in the city, 32 on the highway. It runs on regular gas. It has a 13-gallon fuel tank, so you're looking at around 350 to 400 miles of range, depending on how efficiently you drive. Buick doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. We got the low 9-second range when we first tested this vehicle. We'll retest it again, see what we can get. This is an SUV, but it's not rated to tow. It's not recommended, of course. And the beauty about this only being front-wheel drive and being a small entry-level car, it is very light, especially by new car standards. As this model sits, it weighs in at just over 3,100 pounds. But closing the hood, let's go ahead and talk about the exterior styling of this new Envista. Now, this particular one that I'm showing you is called Ocean Blue. It's the top-of-the-line Avenir trim, and unfortunately, it is kind of a rainy, gloomy day today in PA, so you're not going to be able to see the brightness and the metallic fleck of this color. But what I am impressed with is the styling. You can see this model has the new Buick badge here that they introduced very, very recently. I think it looks a lot more modern, a lot more clean. And then you can see this vehicle is also the first Buick to incorporate their new, or their styling direction that was introduced on the Wildcat EV concept. It's got kind of like that interesting, more aggressive face. It definitely looks a lot more youthful, a lot more aggressive. The Avenir trim includes kind of like this black chrome finish in the actual grille. You have full LED lighting. You can see it's got 2 separate individual lights. The top portion there is for the LED daytime running light and LED turn signal. Down here you'll find the LED low and high beam. No fog lights on this vehicle. You will find a few functional vents and whatnot, but overall you can see it definitely gives off a more premium vibe, and unlike some competitors, again, full LED headlights is standard, which is definitely a nice thing to find. I would like to see fog lights on this car, but overall I think Buick did a really good job with the exterior styling. Now, moving around the side profile of the vehicle, you can see the Envista has kind of like that swoopy coupe-like look at 182.6 inches long. This is actually about 5 inches longer versus its platform mate, the Chevrolet Trax. They ride on the same 106.3 inch long wheelbase. The Envista compared to the Trax is slightly narrow and slightly lower in height. That gives it, again, a sportier coupe-like look to it. The Avenir trim that I'm showing you here is the top-of-the-line model. It's the only version of the Envista that includes body-colored wheel archers and trim at the lower portion. You can see these 19-inch pearl nickel finish wheels look good. with the multi-spoke design. They're riding on a pretty fat 245 by 45 R19 Continental all-season tire. You have an independent front suspension, a torsion beam rear suspension. I believe Buick said this car has just a smidge over 7 inches of ground clearance, but again, remember, no all-wheel drive on this car. Now, in terms of the mirrors, you can see they're body colored. You have an integrated turn signal as well. My tester is missing a sunroof for an extra $800. No roof rails, obviously, either. So that's something you're going to want to have to add in the accessory market or accessory catalog. And then looking at this angle here, this is where the car really gets a lot of attention because of that swoopy coupe-like SUV look. Some people have compared it to vehicles like, I guess, the Lamborghini Urus in terms of the silhouette, which a lot of SUVs have a look like this. So, but I have to say, I am surprised at how premium this car looks, especially from this angle. I think this is the better angle of the car versus from the front. Now you can see here, the rear of the car has the new Buick logo. It spells out Buick at the back, usual badging there for Envista Avenir. This portion right here is just the tail light. As you can see, it is LED, an LED combination. Down here is the turn signal, where it's just an incandescent, which is a little disappointing. The reverse light is also not LED, it's an incandescent. But at least the brake lights and tail lights are LED. You can see there's a little bit of chrome at the back. If you guys don't like the chrome, you can get an ST trim that will black out the accents as opposed to the chrome on the Avenir. Looking at the cargo area, you can see there's no rear wiper there, but opening up the trunk space, there is a power liftgate. That's something you don't typically find in this segment. That's included with the Avenir trim. This is the only trim to get it. And then in terms of the cargo space, you can see there's a little under 19 cubic feet of total space back here, which is fine. If you fold down the seats, it expands it out to around 42 cubic feet, which is not as much as what you're going to find in some competitors, thanks to that sloping coupe-like roof, which lowers the space. You can see there's a little bit of storage to the side there. Underneath here, there's actually a pretty deep storage area with a temporary spare tire, so you don't have to deal with a fix-a-flat kit. But overall, you can see the coupe-like design does eat into the cargo a little bit, but it still is a relatively usable amount of space. So let's go ahead and move on to the interior of this brand new Envista. Before we get inside, however, you can see here's the key fob for the vehicle. This is the intelligent access key that comes included with the Avenir trim. You can see it's the usual Buick key with their new logo. It has the buttons here for unlock, lock, power liftgate, remote start, and a panic function. The key actually is a nice size, but it definitely has a cheaper feel to it. It feels really light and kind of a little plasticky. But approaching the door handle, you can see it's got a traditional door handle. You basically touch that button there to lock and unlock the car. The car also has a walkaway auto lock feature, which you can turn on and off. I have it on right now, so there's no sensor on the back. Like I said earlier, you have to touch that button to unlock the door. Now, my tester, as you can see, has that ocean blue exterior with the black interior. This is the actual real leather seats that you get with the Avenir trim, with the contrasting terracotta stitching with the Avenir embossed into the actual head restraints. These seats are heated, 3 levels, and you get an 8-way power driver's seat with 2-way lumbar. No cooled seats are available. The Avenir trim also, or the Envista trim, the Avenir trim also includes a heated steering wheel, which is nice. The door panel, you can see, has a hard touch injection molded plastic area here. Padded over here, it's got a nice, interesting kind of animal, or not, like an alligator skin, kind of like a high-end purse texture to this leather here, with some aluminum trim, silver accented door handles. The windows are 1 touch down, but not 1 touch up for any of them. So again, I kind of wish that Buick had just made them 1 touch up for at least the front windows. Your power liftgate controls here. You have a hard touch plastic area with the storage in the door pocket. And then the stereo system is just a 6-speaker Buick branded sound system. There's no premium audio upgrade, so that's one of the downsides you have to make with going with an entry-level model. But let's go ahead and get out of the rain and step inside this interior. Now, as you can see, it's got a lower step-in position. It's got a little over 7 inches of ground clearance as I shut the door. The door has a relatively solid sounding thunk. It feels a little bit cheap and hollow, but again, everything is to a price point. Now, starting the vehicle up, the start-stop button is back here. It is blocked by the steering wheel terribly. And then when you turn the vehicle on, you can hear it has that traditional starter noise, because remember, this vehicle is not a hybrid or any kind of mild hybrid and whatnot. So it has a traditional starter noise. And let me go ahead and crank on the heated seat. The heated steering wheel is right here on this relatively cold day, but it makes a relatively good first impression. But I will say I'm not the biggest fan of the design of this interior, the way it looks. Buick is very proud of the fact that you have basically an 11-inch touchscreen here in the center that's included. As you can see, it has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's an 8-inch driver information display here. And then the Avenir trim includes this nice looking leather wrapped wheel with the flat bottom design and the heat function. The wheel itself offers a manual tilt telescoping arrangement, which offers a good amount of adjustability. No paddles on the wheel. Instead, you offer, there is manual control via this little toggle here on the shifter. And in terms of the materials, you can see it's got a soft touch injection molded plastic with some faux terracotta stitching. There's some cheaper plastic here where I really don't like how this kind of looks a little bit sharp and just kind of not very well finished. Some piano black trim here with some silver metallic trim. There is an actual volume knob here, which is nice. And then for an 11-inch display, my biggest gripe is the fact that there's a lot of unused real estate in the actual bezel. As you can see, this area here is just completely black. It makes the screen look smaller than 11 inches. So I just don't like the way this is designed. I kind of just think Buick shouldn't have gone with this kind of like swervy, coupey look, or kind of like just this look right here. It's not really my cup of tea. I think that if they just did more of a squared off design and gotten rid of some of the extra bezels, it would have made the screen look a little bit larger. That's a personal preference of mine. But again, everything's to a price point. You can see the CarPlay function works nicely. It connects to my phone pretty quick. And when it's in CarPlay, it looks fantastic in terms of the resolution. However, if you go back to the native system, you can see I don't like the way that looks. It just looks a little bit cheap. There's no embedded GPS in this car. You have to use your phone, which is fine. Most people are going to use their phone anyways. It's just when you start cycling around here, it's just a little bit slow to respond. So that's kind of the area where I don't really like how it is a little bit slow going in between the graphics, in between menus and whatnot. You can see going through, it's just the software behind this is not the same as what you find in other more expensive GM products, so that's something to keep in mind. But it's not horrible, and at least most of you are just going to go to the CarPlay function anyways, and you're going to really like the way this looks. So that's something to just remember. Most of you are going to use this anyways, and you're going to probably ignore the native system. But looking over here down at the vents, you can see you have a single zone automatic climate control. There's your heated seat control. It's a toggle. However, there's like 3 empty buttons here. I'm not sure what they're for. I wish that Buick just put dual zone climate control, especially on this trim. You have rear seat, or you have traditional vents, hard touch plastic down here, more of that swoopy design element that's from the dash here carried over onto this part of the dash. And then down here you can see wireless phone charging pad, and you have 2 USB charging ports there, a USB-A and a USB-C, along with an actual 12 volt, along with that wireless charging mat. You can see your lane keep assist is right here, along with your auto start stop defeat. You put the vehicle into reverse. There's your backup camera, which has trajectory. It has distance markers, which is nice. No top down 360 camera. I wasn't expecting it at this price point. More of that aluminum look trim, cup holders, piano black plastic here. You have an electronic parking brake, and then there's a padded, slightly padded center console area here with some faux stitching. Open this up, you can see it's actually a relatively deep center console storage area. I fit 2 of my cameras in there, a little bit more storage over here. The seats, the heated function is nice. The leather feels good. I just wish the seats were a little bit more padded and offered more bolstering. It's a little bit of a harder seat, but I drove this car for an hour or 2 and I was pretty comfortable with the seats. They're actually not horrible. You have to remember that this is their entry-level model, so it's not going to have the most comfortable seats. No heads-up display, although that right there is for the auto emergency braking, like flashing lights. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an indication on when the car is braking for you automatically. In terms of the glove compartment, you can see it's a bin style. It's damped but not lined with felt. It offers a good amount of storage. There's an auto-dimming rearview mirror. The lighting in here is just kind of an incandescent lighting. It's not an LED lighting. And then my tester doesn't have a sunroof, which translates into a dark interior. But overall, as you can see, the interior definitely looks decent. I love the fact that the 11-inch display is standard, but I think Buick should have redone the bezel around it because it makes it look smaller than it actually is. But for an entry-level car, it certainly has some decent materials behind it. But let's go ahead and hop into the back seat, and I want to show you guys what that space is like. You can see, opening up the door, there is a surprisingly generous 38.7 inches of legroom back here. That's about 5 more inches, which is what you're going to find in like the Venue or the Nissan Kicks. These seats, you can see, have the same nice terracotta contrasting stitching. This is a real leather seat. You can see you can fold the seat down and expand the cargo capacity. It's almost a flat floor, which is nice. And then the seats themselves, they don't offer a recline function, which I didn't expect it to. They don't also move forward and back. Materials back here are hard touch plastic. They don't put as much of the aluminum trim back here. It is slightly padded over here, but again, cost cutting is going to be apparent in something in this price category. Getting inside back here, you can see this is where I'd have the front seat to drive. There is a surprising amount of legroom back here. You can see once you're back here, there's a really good amount of space. Let me turn this light back on here because it's a little bit dark. There is about 38.5 inches. You can see there's a completely flat floor here, and that's because it doesn't need to have like a drive shaft tunnel because there's no all-wheel drive. You have 2 USB charging ports here, no rear seat air vents, just a big open space. You have 2 storage cubbies over here, and if you want to fold this armrest down, you'll have 2 cup holders here. So it's not bad in terms of the space, especially with just 2 adults. In terms of the headroom space, you can see when I lean back, my head gets kind of close to the ceiling. So if you're over 6 feet, you're going to find the headroom space to be a little bit lacking. But overall, as you can see, the back seat is certainly usable for average size adults. So finding an affordable brand new car that starts well under $25,000 is getting harder and harder to find nowadays. But thankfully, when Buick and of course Chevrolet came out with these two new models, it really put the automaker kind of in a great spot to introduce vehicles that are far more affordable. Now remember, this vehicle is built on the same architecture as the Chevy Trax, and the downside about this being their most affordable model is you can't get this car with all-wheel drive. Now, on most days, like in drive conditions, that's not going to really matter, but today it's kind of a rainy day, and this is going to kind of demonstrate a little bit where the limitations of front-wheel drive can come into play. It's not that it's unsafe, it's just when it's wet outside, you're going to notice the front wheels slipping a lot. Now, my first impressions on the Envista are quite positive. Just like when I first drove this car a couple months ago, earlier this year, I was impressed. It has a very premium vibe to it, even though this is based on an economy car roots. Remember, it has a torsion beam rear suspension, no all-wheel drive, but it has a unique engine, a 3-cylinder turbocharged engine that makes only 137 horsepower, but that 162 pound-feet of torque should play into giving it some pretty decent numbers. So let's go ahead and see what we can get 0 to 60 wise here. There's no sport mode or anything like that. There's no manual mode, or there is a manual mode, but I'll just leave it in automatic. We'll brake torque it. 0 to 60 in 9.5 seconds there. That's with a smidge of wheel spin. I'll see if I can try it again down the road. The road is a little damp right now, although it's not raining over here quite yet. But 9.5 is pretty much what I expected. Remember, it only has 137 horsepower, and you also have to keep in mind this segment of vehicle is known for very sluggish acceleration. So you want to compare it to vehicles like the Nissan Kicks, the Hyundai Venue. Those are the other two vehicles that offer only a front drive option in this segment. But overall, with that 3-cylinder engine, it feels significantly faster until you start getting up into the higher speeds because of that 162 pound-feet of torque. This engine offers plenty of torque down low, and that's what gives it a much more, upscale feel. Not upscale, just more peppier feel versus naturally aspirated 4s. But start, stop, I'll turn that off right here, and then we'll just floor it. A little bit of wheel spin still. The 6-speed auto shifts very slowly, but it is smooth. 9.9 there, so that's with it more going slightly uphill. We'll try it one more time up ahead and see if we can brake or get under 9.5 seconds. But I have to say, even though it is a very slow time, it doesn't feel quite as slow as something like the Nissan Versa that I drove earlier this year that had a naturally aspirated 1.8-liter engine with 122 horsepower. That's the same engine that you'll find in the Nissan Kicks, which is just bloody slow because, again, it has about 50 pound-feet less torque than this three-cylinder. And I also happen to like the way this 3-cylinder sounds. When you put your foot down, it offers plenty of mid-range grunt. And it has almost kind of like a burly, V6-like sound to it. Because remember, think of it as basically a half of a V6 engine. That's what makes a 3-cylinder engine super unique. It's kind of the same thing that you notice in something like the GR Corolla, for example, that also has a turbocharged 3-cylinder, where it has a much more interesting sound versus, a typical V6. But just driving the Envista Avenir normally, Buick's quiet tuning technology comes into play here because I'm actually genuinely surprised. It has a nice and refined feel to it when you're just driving this vehicle around town. The ride quality is good, the suspension is softer, but it also transmits into a good ride quality and sporty. In terms of sportiness, this is a small vehicle, only weighs 3,100 pounds, so you feel that lightweight. Does it feel like hot hatch sporty? No, it doesn't feel like a hot hatch, but it feels competent, it feels refined, it feels like I can take this on a longer trip. It's not gonna beat me up like some vehicles in this segment do, which just feel unbelievably cheap. And then when you drive it around normally, this engine is very smooth and refined. It really is a shocker to me how premium feeling this 3-cylinder sounds, and it really shows accomplishments with General Motors and Buick, because this is their cheapest car, yet it doesn't give me a feeling of cheapness until I start really looking at the interior. The interior for me, while it does look nice, there are certain parts of it that I think aren't really necessarily my cup of tea. But let's try it here again and see what we can get this time. I won't brake torque it this time, I'm just gonna floor it. Spinning the tires a bit. Traction control isn't as intrusive as I thought it would be though. All right, 8.8 there, so not bad. That is the much better time. When I brake torqued it, it actually slowed the vehicle down. So the quickest acceleration is just for a stop, and 8.9 seconds. That's going to be fine. In day-to-day driving, you're likely going to get into the mid 9-second range. But again, nobody buys this car for incredibly fast 0 to 60 times. That's not why you buy one of these at all. But overall, I am genuinely impressed, especially considering this car starts at around 22,000 bucks. Just normal driving, it feels good. The seats are also comfortable, but they also feel a little bit too hard for me. They're a little flat. There's obviously no bolstering. The seats are heated, which is nice. I also have an 8-way power driver with 2-way lumbar, which is a nice touch. No memory seats, which I wasn't expecting to find something like that in this segment. But the steering wheel feels really nice in my hands. I can see out of the vehicle decently well out of the front, the sides. This A-pillar is on the thicker side. The view out of the back isn't as hateful as I thought it was going to be. Buick does not offer a digital camera rearview mirror, but they do have an auto-dimming rearview mirror, which is nice. In terms of driver assistance, this car has the driver confidence package for $795. It includes adaptive cruise, rear cross traffic alert, blind spot monitoring, all the stuff that you're expecting, although there's no version of GM Super Cruise available on this car because, remember, it's an entry-level car. All the tech in it works pretty well, and you know, I have very little complaints. I mean, that's the interesting part about this car is it is surprisingly good. It's not even good for the money, it's good in general, and I think that's the best part. Now, do I wish Buick would offer all-wheel drive on this car? Absolutely. I think that if they just added all-wheel drive and then upped the price by $2,000, people would pay it all day long. But again, then you're kind of pushing yourself into the Encore GX, territory. And that's what Buick essentially wants you to do. If you want all-wheel drive, they will happily sell you an Encore GX that offers the all-wheel drive that you're looking for. Now, in terms of the fuel efficiency, the trip computer is accessed in here. In my week's worth of testing, I've been averaging around 25 mpg in mixed driving. Now on the highway, it did get around 29 mpg, which is not bad. On a full tank of fuel, you're looking at around 350 to 400 miles of range, depending on, of course, how you drive. The fuel efficiency could be better. That's where I do wish that this car was more fuel efficient. If it was like a hybrid option available, they don't offer that. I mean, that's where something like the Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid would do better MPG, although the Corolla Cross technically is a little bit more expensive than this car at the top end, but you can get into a Corolla Cross Hybrid for, similar money as this top of the line model. So it kind of shows a little bit of cross shopping because some people prefer the more utilitarian feel with all-wheel drive, with more of like an off-road rugged feel. That's where the Crosstrek sales come into play. But some people just don't need the all-wheel drive, but they want something a little more upscale. I mean, this car definitely attracts a lot of attention in terms of the design. People don't expect it to be, to look like this car. It's a very interesting car, this Buick Envista, and I think it really catches people by surprise. So overall, in terms of just the driving dynamics, if you guys are skeptical about this car, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how it drives. I think the only thing that I want Buick to consider looking into is some kind of electrification and some kind of all-wheel drive option. But again, that would all drive the price up. So for what the car is, for what it offers at this price point, I think a lot of people are going to be pleasantly shocked with how good the Envista is to drive. So after spending a full week with the entry-level Buick Envista, I have to say, when I first had a chance to drive this vehicle earlier this year, I was pretty impressed with the overall package. This was a car that was affordable to purchase, but it didn't necessarily feel cheap. And after spending a full week with the car, I can confirm that this is definitely one of the more premium feeling entry-level subcompact SUVs. I mean, I call it an SUV, Buick calls it an SUV, but it's really more like a taller, lifted kind of wagon-like vehicle, hatchback-like vehicle with that swooping coupe roof profile. In terms of the powertrain, that 1.2-liter 3-cylinder is a surprisingly good powertrain combination with that 6-speed auto. 137 horsepower doesn't sound like a lot, but 0 to 60 times in the low 9-second range is perfectly adequate for people looking in this class of vehicle. I still wish that it offered all-wheel drive, especially during rainy conditions like this, although it wasn't like it was unsafe to drive this car. You just have to deal with the fact that the front wheels are going to spin from time to time. If you live in an area that's full of snow or you want to go a little bit of light off-roading, Buick will happily sell you an Encore GX. But I really think that they could easily add all-wheel drive to this vehicle and charge like between $2,000 to $3,000. People would easily pay it. The interior is probably the area where it's going to show you a little bit of cheapness, especially when you look at the tech software behind it, because yes, you do have that massive 11-inch display, but the software behind it is definitely laggy. It feels like a step below what you find in other GM products, which have a much quicker processor, a better looking infotainment graphics. The rear seat has a surprisingly amount of good rear seat legroom. While the cargo area is compromised, Chevy will happily sell you a Trax if you prefer more of a squared off design. I think Buick has done a fantastic job here with making an entry-level car not look or feel entry-level, because while this car starts at around $22,400, that's only $2,000 more than the Trax. This Envista Avenir trim that I'm showing you starts at around $29,000. Now that does include a lot of nice things like the upgraded leather, the upgraded wheels, of course, the painted trim around the outside, the power liftgate. Those are all nice features. My tester here with the driver confidence package and destination comes in at just over $30,000. That's right, a brand new, fully loaded car for around $30,000 seems like a steal. Now this one here is missing a sunroof, which would push the price to around $31,000, but still, there's not a lot of cars you can get out there for this little money that feels this expensive, because on the outside I think this car looks like $40,000. On the inside it definitely looks like $30,000. So I would really like to see Buick add a better software behind the 11-inch display to kind of make it feel less cheap, because that was really the only part of the interior that I personally didn't like. And again, for the company to also add all-wheel drive, they could increase the price by about $2,000. I think people would still pay it. But again, if you want all-wheel drive, Buick will happily sell you the Encore GX, which is honestly not that much more expensive. It is a smaller vehicle, surprisingly. This is actually bigger versus the Encore GX. But again, if you guys are looking for an entry-level SUV with a coupe-like design, and you really didn't like the way the looks of the Nissan Kicks or the Hyundai Venue, you should definitely put this and the sibling to this car, the Trax, at the very top of your list. With all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 Buick Envista Avenir. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.